Hello, good evening. I'm Brett, and I'm your host for this evening. If, like me, you enjoy investigating spine-tingling stories and mysterious cold cases, diving deep into the most chilling unsolved murders, you've come to the right place. Welcome to Sunday Night Mystery. And tonight, we investigate another cold case from the files of Sunday Night Mystery. We also have books to accompany the show outlining all the details of our cases. Just visit Amazon and search Sunday Night Mystery. There are few things that can tear the fabric of a small community apart. Fewer still when the victim is a quiet, seemingly inconspicuous man whose life was anything but extraordinary. Yet, on the 10th of August 1988, the brutal and senseless murder of Samuel Graham Williamson did just that to the serene town of Bournemouth. What followed was a web of psychological complexity, unspeakable violence, and a mystery so deep that its shadows still linger decades later. The murder of Samuel Williamson was not just the death of a man, it was the death of a certain kind of peace, one that could never be restored. Samuel was not a man many people paid much attention to. He was a bachelor, a drifter, originally from County Antrim in Northern Ireland, who had settled in Bournemouth under the guise of a quiet existence. Samuel wasn't married, he had no children, and he kept to himself. He wasn't one to engage in conflicts or speak ill of anyone. For the most part, he was unnoticed. A man whose life could have easily been overlooked by anyone who passed him on the street. However, as the events of that fateful night unraveled, a more complex portrait of Samuel began to emerge. A man with secrets, with history, and a man, it seemed, who had been marked for something far darker. On that summer evening in 1988, when the sun dipped below the horizon and the air turned cooler with the approaching night, Samuel Williamson's life was cut short in an appalling display of violence. His body was found in the quiet grounds of a DHSS office in Cotlands Road in Bournemouth, burned almost beyond recognition. The nature of his death was not only brutal but deeply personal. His body had been strangled with a leather belt, beaten to the point of madness, and left to burn. Its final moments an inferno of rage and hatred. What kind of rage, what kind of deep-set enmity could bring a person to destroy another in such a savage manner? The first question in the minds of investigators was why? Samuel's life, as far as they could tell, had been one of isolation. He kept few close connections and was never known to be involved in any criminal activity. There were no debts to settle, no lovers to betray, no bitter enemies. He was a man whose life had unfolded without drama or disruption, until the moment it ended in unimaginable violence. Yet, underneath that quiet facade, things were not as simple as they first appeared. Samuel had, in fact, once had a presence in the world that had been entirely overlooked by those around him. What if this hidden past was precisely what led to his brutal end? Born in County Antrim, Samuel had come to England years earlier, seeking to build a new life. A quiet life, yes, but one filled with unspoken complications. Though he didn't outwardly express it, Samuel's past was marked by personal losses. He had once been a man of ambition, someone who aspired to a family, a future, a name. But those dreams had crumbled. His heart had been broken by a failed relationship in his youth, one so tragic that it had altered the trajectory of his life. He'd withdrawn from the world, keeping to himself, living out his days in a modest flat in Bournemouth, surviving on the fringes of society. Yet the emotional scars ran deeper than anyone had realized. Could it have been this isolation, this quiet pain that had somehow drawn someone else into his life? A person with an obsession or a darkness of their own? Had Samuel's past caught up with him in such a horrific way? When Samuel's body was discovered, the crime scene sent chills through the investigating officers. The methodical brutality of the murder was evident from the outset. The body had been set on fire, yes, but the fire was not just to cover up for the killer's tracks. It was a statement. It was as if the killer wanted to erase any trace of Samuel, not just from the physical world, but from the very fabric of existence. The body was nearly unrecognizable, but the violence, the savage nature of it spoke volumes. The strangulation with a thick leather belt, its brass buckle glinting in the low light, seemed more than a random choice of weapon. It was a biker's belt, the kind that one might find in a subculture of rebels, people who lived on the edge of society. The brutality with which the belt was used suggested that the killer was not just a stranger to violence, but more than that. It hinted at something more intimate, a connection between the victim and the killer that went beyond the surface. Was this a crime of passion, a crime fueled by hatred, or was it something darker, a ritual, a symbolic act that only the killer understood? The eerie connection to the biker community added another layer of intrigue. The police appealed to local motorcyclists, hoping that someone might recognize the distinctive belt, but the lead, like so many others, faded into obscurity. Was the belt a clue to a more organized crime ring, or a symbolic token of something more personal? Was it possible that the killer was someone familiar to Samuel, someone who had taken his time to carefully choose a weapon that would both serve as a method of murder and a statement to the world? The question lingered, unanswerable. As the case stretched on without clear leads, a breakthrough came in the form of a suspect, Francis Joseph MacDonald. A man with a troubling past, MacDonald was no stranger to police attention. His movements had been traced to the Bournemouth area around the time of Samuel's murder. His name was linked to several other petty incidents in the years preceding the murder. But it wasn't just his presence that made MacDonald a suspect. It was the fact that his DNA had been found beneath Samuel's fingernails. A man with a violent streak, MacDonald was known to be an alcoholic, often blacking out and losing chunks of time in his memory. It was this very blacking out that made him a peculiar figure in the investigation. When questioned, MacDonald admitted that he couldn't remember anything from the night of Samuel's death. His memory, he claimed, was lost in a haze of alcohol. But the evidence was there. His fingerprints were discovered on a lager can found near Samuel's body. DNA from his sweat and saliva had been found under Samuel's fingernails, suggesting a struggle. Yet despite the circumstantial evidence, there was no smoking gun. MacDonald denied any involvement, and the case against him lacked the physical evidence needed to secure a conviction. When he was acquitted after a brief trial, the investigators were left with an eerie sense of unease. How could this man, whose DNA was so intimately tied to the crime scene, be let go so easily? Was he truly innocent, or had the system failed to catch a killer? Nearly 17 years after the trial, the case was reopened. Cold case detectives using new forensic technology to examine the evidence. DNA evidence that had previously gone unnoticed was now analysed under more sophisticated tools. MacDonald's DNA was confirmed again, this time under more irrefutable terms. It was as though the years had peeled away layers of doubt, revealing the truth that had been hidden for so long. But as the trial approached once again, a chilling truth began to surface. MacDonald's memory was still gone. He claimed, as he had before, that he couldn't remember the events of that night. But could this be a case of self-preservation? Or was it genuine memory loss caused by his alcoholism? The question tortured investigators. Was this man truly a killer who'd managed to bury the truth in the depths of his subconscious? Or was he an innocent man whose life had been destroyed by a series of coincidences? The jury, after an hour of deliberation, chose the latter, acquitting him once more. The case of Samuel Williamson's death remains open, a wound that has never healed. The brutal, fiery end to his life raises more questions than answers. Was he the victim of a random act of violence, or was he chosen for some dark, secret reason? Did MacDonald have a deeper connection to the crime than anyone was able to uncover? Or was there someone else, someone still hidden in the shadows who knows the truth but has yet to speak? The haunting questions continue to linger. Why was Samuel targeted in the first place? What did the killer want from him? Was it revenge, a personal grudge, or something more insidious? Something rooted in Samuel's hidden past? Was the crime premeditated or an act of spontaneous violence? The meticulous brutality of the murder suggests that it was planned. But why? And why was it so personal? What role did the biker community play, if any? Was the killer part of this world, or was it merely a coincidental clue that never led anywhere? What was the truth behind MacDonald's memory loss? Was it genuine, or was it the perfect defense for a man with more blood on his hands than anyone could have imagined? The fire that took Samuel Williamson's life still burns in the minds of those who seek justice. It's a fire that has consumed more than just body. It has consumed the lives of those who were close to him. The lives of the investigators who never found the answers, and the life of a man who may have been either the victim or the perpetrator, or both. The truth remains out there, waiting to be uncovered, but until then, it will continue to haunt the streets of Bournemouth, where Samuel Graham Williamson's death remains an unsolved mystery, shrouded in smoke and fire. If you have any information about tonight's or any of the cases that we feature, please contact your local authorities. Stay safe, and until next time, keep questioning, keep searching, and keep unraveling the mysteries of our world. Join us next time as we delve into another chilling mystery that continues to confound investigators and haunt communities. Until then, stay vigilant and never forget those who've been lost to the shadows. Until next week, stay safe. Remember, the truth may be hidden, but as long as we keep the investigation alive, it's never truly lost. I'm Brett, and I'll see you next time on Sunday Night Mystery. But for now, stay curious, stay vigilant, and be sure to guard yourself against the darkness that surrounds us all. I'll see you next week on Sunday Night Mystery. These podcasts are based on real unsolved murder cases. However, some elements have been dramatised or fictionalised for narrative purposes. While every effort has been made to accurately represent the facts, certain events, dialogues and characters have been reconstructed or adapted to enhance in the storytelling. The intent of our podcast is to inform, engage and explore possible scenarios, not to accuse or implicate any individual. Any similarities to real people living or dead outside of the documented historical cases are purely coincidental. The views and interpretations are purely of this podcast and do not reflect those of law enforcement or any official investigative bodies. Listeners should approach the content as a blend of factual research and creative non-fiction. If you have any information related to any of our cases, please contact the relevant authorities.